Welcome to Excel and Business Math video number 31. Hey, in this video, we got to talk about night shift and the payroll time sheet hours worked formula. Now, what do we mean by night shift? Can you work from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m.? Now, that's not what we're going to consider a night shift because the formula we learned in the last couple videos will work fine when we take time out minus time in. That would give us 7 hours. But look at this. Virgie worked from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. Anytime you have time in and time out and midnight is in between, then our formula breaks down and doesn't work. So in this video, we'll see these topics and we'll see not just one, but 1, 2, 3 different formulas that will calculate either a day shift or night shift payroll hours worked formula. All right, we want to start out by going to the sheet night shift problem. I'm going to click on that sheet. And the fundamental problem is that when the time out is a smaller decimal than time in, our hours worked formula, which was time out minus time in times 24, will not work. Now, you have to remember that times, and I entered the times once and twice here. Here, these times have a number formatting. And remember, what's underneath any time? Well, 1 p.m. underneath that time number formatting is a decimal that represents the proportion of one 24-hour day. 13 hours through the day divided by 24. Here, this is 20 divided by 24, 19 divided by 24. But here's the problem. If this is time out, this is underneath that 3 a.m. time number formatting is the decimal that's represented by 3 divided by 24. So let's prove that to ourselves. Highlight, and we remove the number formatting with our eraser, the general number formatting. Now, we're actually going to have to use general number formatting to wipe away time this week and next week dates so often. Let's just get used to using the keyboard. It depends on which computer keyboard you have. You either have to find the grave accent or the tilde key. So I'm going to use Control-Shift-Tilde. And there's our problem. Whereas this one will work, time out is a bigger decimal than time in. Anytime we get a decimal smaller, remember we're taking this and subtracting now a bigger decimal. Now in Excel, negative times are not allowed. Here's the same two employees, Kenya and Virgie. Time in, time out. So let's create later time minus earlier time formula, or time out minus time in. Now we're not going to worry about times 24. We just want to get the time part of it. Subtraction between time out and time in working equals time out minus time in. Now remember, formulas will pull the number formatting. So when I enter this, I have time number formatting. Now, we're not going to worry about that right now because it says 7 a.m., 7 hours. But watch what happens when I copy this down. In Excel, that is the error message you get when you have a negative time. It's not allowed. If you hover your cursor, you can read the screen tip. Dates and times that are negative or too large show as pound, pound, pound. Now, normally, we're used to that pound, 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 meaning that the column is not wide enough. But if you drag this however wide, it's never going to get fixed because that's from negative time. Control-Z. Now, I'm going to leave that there. Do the same formula again, later time minus earlier time, Control-Enter. And now I want to wipe away the time number formatting, Control-Shift-Tilde. And now when I copy down, I can see the real problem. Whereas here, it took larger decimal minus smaller decimal and got a positive number. Here, it took a much smaller decimal and subtracted a bigger decimal and got a negative number. That negative number will not work when we're trying to figure out how many hours there are. 7 hours and 8 hours is what we're after. Now, there's a pattern we can recognize. When I take F2 timeout minus time in, and the timeout is smaller, I'm always going to get, and I'm going to use escape here, I'm always going to get a negative decimal. But if I add 1 to that, it will give me exactly the correct time. Now notice, what is 0.66666? We learned from earlier in the class when we translate from a decimal to a fraction. That is equivalent as a fraction to 2/3. So that's like minus 2/3 of the way through the day. But if I add 1, it'll give me 0.3333 or 1/3. And that's exactly what 8 divided by 24 is. Now, when we subtract timeout minus time in, and the timeout is smaller, we will always get a negative decimal that if we add 1 to, will give us the correct proportion of a 24-hour day. Now, I want to show you a couple different ways to do this. And we're going to start off by just thinking, what formula do we want when the person works regular hours, meaning timeout is bigger than time in? And what's the formula we could use when the timeout is smaller than the time in? Well, let's think of those two formulas. For here, a regular day shift, we simply take timeout minus time in. Control-Enter, Control-Shift tilde. So that's the formula we want. But down here, we want a different formula. I want to get the same negative decimal, but add 1. So I'm going to say timeout minus time in plus 1. When I Control-Enter, Control-Shift tilde, that means we have one of 2 different formulas that we should have in the column. For every single employee, we're going to have to figure out a logical test that will determine whether we put timeout minus time in or timeout minus time in plus 1. Now, anytime we have one of 2 things that go into a column, that's the perfect job for the if function. The only trick is we need a logical test to determine when if should put this formula in or when it should put that formula in. And the logical test should be easy. We simply check, hey, is timeout smaller than time in? That way we can get a true-false logical test formula that will trigger one of these 2 formulas. So you ready? The logical test would be, hey, I need you to look at the timeout and tell me, is it smaller than the time in? Now, anytime we use a comparative operator in a formula, as we've seen a few times in this class, we are creating a logical formula. And logical formulas only have 2 possible answers, either true or false. Control-Enter. It's false for the first employee, but true for the second employee. That means we can use that inside the first argument of if, and then the value if true will be that formula, and F2, the value if false, will be that formula. So you ready? I'm actually going to delete these, and we're going to create the whole formula. Equals if. Our logical test, we need for every employee to check if the timeout is less than the time in. That will deliver a true or false. Comma. Value if true. That means timeout is smaller. Well, we take the same formula, timeout minus time in, but we have to add 1 back in. That's the value if true. Comma. Value if false. That's our not night shift formula, timeout minus time in. Close parentheses. In this formula, we had a logical test to test if the timeout is smaller than the time in. If that comes out true, there's our formula. If it comes out false, boom, that one will work. Control-Enter, copy it down. And the beauty of that is it will work no matter if the person worked a normal shift or a night shift. Now, there's 2 other ways we can do this besides the if function. And we need to learn something important about logical formulas, true and false. Now, if I hit F2, if I were to use that, not by itself in a logical formula and not inside the if function like we did here. But if I put that into a regular math formula, guess what? Excel will treat true as 1 and false as 0. Remember, our formula down here needed to add 1. Here, for value of false, if I added 0, it wouldn't change it. So guess what? We can take this base formula right here and simply add to the end of it this little logical bit right here. And since true is 1 and false is 0, right here, if I were to add that logical test, it would add 0. But here it would be just like adding 1. Now let's see if we can do this. Equals, it's the regular formula, time out minus time in. And I need to add either 1 or 0 plus. And we have to put it in parentheses. I'm going to say the logical test is the time out smaller than the time in. Close parentheses. Right here, that will give us a false, so it will add 0. Control Enter. But when I copy down, that is amazing. F2 right here, that gives us a true, so it's just like adding 1. Now we can prove this to ourselves by running Formula Evaluator. We've seen this a few times earlier in the class. With the cell selected, go up to the Formulas ribbon tab, over to Formula Auditing, over to Evaluate Formula. Now we can step through our formula. The underlined part, if I click Evaluate or hit Enter, will be evaluated. Enter, Enter. It'll do the subtraction. For the first employee, we got 0.29. But now it'll do the logical part. Enter, Enter. It's asking the question, is timeout greater than time in? And guess what? The answer is false. So when I evaluate this, it will add 0. Now I'm going to click Escape, come down here. Let's run the same evaluate formula. Ready? Enter, Enter, Enter. So for the timeout minus time in, we definitely have a negative decimal. Enter, Enter. Now the logical test when I hit Enter comes out true. And when I enter and add true in a math equation, Enter, it's like adding 1. So that is a second method we have for calculating either the day shift or the night shift. Now, the beauty of the if function, if I hit F2, is the whole logical path is here, right? We know this comes out true or false. That's the formula for true. That's the formula for false. If you like that one, then by all means, use that one. If that one makes more sense, use that one. This one, it's more condensed and precise, but it requires that you know that true is 1 and false is 0. And it's a little bit tricky, right? Same formula in every cell. It's just going to be adding 0, or down here it adds 1. Now, there's a third way to do this, and this way is hard to understand. Now, I actually am going to use the mod function, and the formula will be the absolute shortest when compared to these two other methods. Now, I'm not going to explain the logic of this in this class. It's beyond the scope of this business math class. But I absolutely, if you have a curious mind, I already have a video that explains in great detail why and how this formula works. So you can check that out if you want. But you're not going to believe this. Equals the mod function. And we saw the mod function earlier in the class when we talked about division and getting a remainder. But mod function does something funny for negative numbers, as demonstrated in that video down here. But here's the formula. You're not going to believe this. I simply take time out minus time in. That is the numerator, comma, the denominator divisor is 1, and that's it. That formula. And this formula has been known for decades in Excel. If you're doing payroll, that's the formula to use. Control Enter, Control Shift tilde to remove the formatting and copy it down. So there you have it. 1, 2, and 3 different ways to do either a day shift or a night shift. All right, now we want to put this all into action. We're going to go over to the payroll time sheet. Here's our list of employees. There's the wage per hour, time in, time out. And now we need to do our hours worked. Now I'm going to start off by doing the if function equals if. And we're going to do our logical test. Is the time out less than the time in? If that's true, then we simply take time out minus time in and add 1. That's the value of true, comma. The value of false, that means timeout is not smaller. So I simply take timeout minus time in. Now I close parentheses. And guess what? The if function is delivering that decimal. You could prove it to yourself. Control Enter and copy it down. But that's not what we want. We need hours worked. So in the top cell, remember, if is just delivering a decimal. So I can simply say times 24. 24 hours in a day is a number that will never change. So we hard code it into our formula. Control Enter. Double click and send it down. Go to the last cell and hit F2, verifying that the cell references are correct. If you like the shorter version, we can simply take time out minus time in, and we're going to add in parentheses the logical test. Is time out less than time in? Close parentheses, Control Enter, and copy it down. By the way, in this formula right here, we have to put the comparative operator in parentheses to force Excel to calculate it first, before the math operators. Now, we know our math order of operations, but comparative operators are evaluated in Excel after math operators. So that's why we have to put it in parentheses. Now, that is not going to work because I want to multiply it by 24. So if I just come to the end and do times 24, that will not work because I need to run everything here before multiplying by 24. That multiplying would automatically be calculated before the subtracting and adding. So I have to make sure if I'm going to use this version to put parentheses around all of that. Now that'll work. Control Enter. Double click and send it down. Go to the last cell and hit F2, verifying that all the cell references are correct. Now, the mod function is so much easier. We'll cut right to the chase. I'm simply going to take in the number argument of mod, time out minus time in, comma, the denominator or divisor is 1, close parentheses, and Control Enter, Control Shift tilde. If I copy that down, those are the decimals, but F2, just like the if function is just delivering a decimal, so is the mod. So I can simply times 24. Control Enter, Control Shift tilde, and copy it down. I wish I knew how to turn off the fact that these cell references suck the number formatting. I'm going to click Escape. Verify F2, cell references looking good. Now we do our gross pay. And remember, anytime we're dealing with money, we have to ask the question, is the round function required? The 3 requirements. Number 1, money only has pennies, so we're required to round. Do we have extraneous decimals? Yes, we do. Are we going to use these formula results in other formulas? Uh-oh, it doesn't look like we're going to. But I'm going to force the issue here by saying total down here. Now I want to add all the gross pay to figure out the total. So 1, 2, 3, all conditions are met. Equals the round function. I'm multiplying hours worked times wage per hour. Both as relative cell references, comma. We're rounding to the penny, so I tell the round function to round to the penny with 2 in num digits. Close parentheses, Control Enter, copy it down. Come down to cell F23 and Alt equals. I don't like that at all. I'm going to make sure and redirect it. Control Enter. 3,610 cents. All right, so that's how to deal with day and night shift payroll time sheets. And there are 2 homework problems for you to do. And what do we do in this video? We saw 1, 2, 3 different formulas for calculating hours worked that allows us to have employees that either work regular shifts or a night shift. All right, if you like that video, be sure to click that thumbs up, leave a comment, and sub, because there's lots more videos to come from Excel is Fun. Including the next few videos, we'll have a few more payroll videos, including our next video, video number 32, where we'll actually talk about rounding to a 15-minute or 5-minute time period, which is sometimes required for a particular business. All right, we'll see you next video.